After more than a century, John Browning's most famous creation, the Colt 1911 pistol, remains an example of quality, beauty, and, in my humble opinion, patriotism. Today we'll learn a bit more about this legend's history and understand how a 100-year-old design can still be relevant in such a competitive market. Hello and welcome to Warfare Today. After years of using a variety of handguns, in 1890, the military decided that standardization was needed. They were on the lookout for a new sidearm, preferably a semi-automatic one. The first pistols were introduced in that same decade. Needless to say, the new weapons really drew the Army's attention, mainly because they would be an excellent complement to the newly incorporated rifles, the Springfield 1892 Krag-Jorgensen and the Winchester M1895 Lee Navy. The tested models were Mauser C96, Mannlicher M1894, Colt M1900, and the winning model, Luger P08, manufactured by the German company DWM. But Luger's service didn't last long. During the Philippine-American War, it performed far below expectations. In the end, the weapon of choice for this war was the Colt 1873, the famous Peacemaker. According to fighters, caliber 7.62 by 21mm was not as efficient as the .45 Colt ammunition. Yes, the Peacemaker is a single action and relatively slower than the Luger. But the .45 caliber proved to be strong enough to make up the difference. Trying to regain the gun's credibility, DWM changed the caliber to 9 by 19mm. But the military had already made up their minds. They wanted a brand new gun, it should be semi-auto, and chambered in at least .45 caliber. When the test resumed in 1906, there were only two finalist companies left after preliminary evaluations: Savage Arms and Colt's Manufacturing Company. After more tests and modifications, Colt's gun was chosen in 1911 and incorporated into the Army in March of that same year. It was dubbed Model of 1911 at the time and renamed M1911 only a decade later. More than 68,000 units were delivered to America's armed forces in 1917, manufactured by Colt's Manufacturing Company and Springfield Armory. As you may recall, America entered World War I that same year. The war increased the volume of orders absurdly. So Colt and Springfield factories alone would not be able to meet the new growing demand for firearms. In order to meet this emergency demand, more factories would be needed. The first to join the effort was Remington UMC, which began the assembly immediately. Other companies were about to begin production of the M1911, but the war ended in November 1918, and the contracts were then canceled. The global conflict proved to be the ideal test for the M1911. After gathering a large amount of data, a list with a series of changes was sent to the manufacturers. Thus a new model was created, the Colt M1911A1, introduced in 1924. The changes were as follows: the grip splint lost the two small diamonds. The trigger became shorter. The mainspring housing is now arched. The relief cut was redesigned. The front and rear sights were slightly redesigned too. But the most notable change was the addition of a long spur. This upgrade protects the operator from a damned incident called hammer bite. A hammer bite happens when the external hammer pinches or pokes the web of the shooter's hand between the thumb and forefinger when the gun is fired. It's not the end of the world, but it's very annoying, and any modification aiming to solve this issue is surely welcome. As you can see, none of these requests changed the weapon's internals. Another proof of the enormous quality of the original project. Years later, in 1941, the United States entered World War II. And with the war came an unprecedented demand for weapons. 1,900,000 units of M1911A1 were ordered during the conflict. And to meet this colossal demand, several companies joined in the war effort. The main ones were Remington Rand, the typewriter manufacturer; Colt's Manufacturing Company, for obvious reasons; Ithaca Gun Company; Union Switch and Signal, manufacturer of railway signaling; and Singer, the sewing machine manufacturer. To cut costs, all units ordered for the World War II front received a trim modification. Nothing major, they simply replaced the wooden grip splint with a plastic one. An interesting aspect of these World War II units is their rarity nowadays, particularly those 500 units manufactured by Singer. In December 2017, a Colt M1911A1 Singer was auctioned off for $414,000. After the world conflict, this weapon was still widely used in the Korean War and Vietnam. It remained in the military holsters until the late 1970s when Congress began a replacement process. They wanted a more modern weapon that used the 9 by 19mm NATO caliber. After many tests and disagreements between the Army and the Air Force, the chosen one was the Italian Beretta M9. At first, it seemed to be the ideal choice, as in addition to being modern, it also met the ammo requirements, and that's exactly what ended up being the problem. The 9mm projectile has less kinetic energy and a narrower shape than the .45 caliber. When those characteristics are combined, we have a weapon that does less damage, requiring more shots to take down a target. This caused controversy among the military, particularly among the elite squads, who again started requesting .45 caliber pistols. Although Colt introduced a more modern version of the M1911 called Colt OHWS, the winner of this dispute was the Mark 23 Mod 0 pistol from the German HK. But the military's use of Colt pistols did not end there. The production of a special model began in 1985, initially only for members of the Navy's expeditionary forces. The Musoc pistol is a revised and modernized version of our beloved M1911. These include ambidextrous thumb safeties, aftermarket grip safeties, verdeculite triggers, rounded hammer, accurized match-grade barrels, Patchmere rubber grips, front cocking serrations, and Wilson Combat stainless steel magazines. Following the Navy's request, these new pistols were also obtained by the FBI and SWAT teams. In 2012, the Navy placed the final order for Colt pistols before replacement. 12,000 units of the M45A1 model, which among the main changes received a tactical rail for laser sight or tactical flashlight, dual recoil spring, and desert tan finish. Many military and law enforcement organizations in the U.S. and other countries continue to use M1911A1 and its variants, including Los Angeles PD, SWAT and the FBI Hostage Rescue Team, FBI Regional SWAT Teams, and Delta Force. Regarding international use, around 29 countries use Colt pistols for law enforcement and military forces, including Brazil, Mexico, and Chile. Now let's talk about the models available for civilians. Aside from the M1911 and M1911A1 models, another one available to the general public was the Colt Lightweight Commander. This variant started production in 1950. Among the main differences are an aluminum frame and a 4.25-inch barrel rather than the 5-inch one found in traditional models. The standard caliber was 9 by 19 mm, but the 45 ACP and 38 Super versions were introduced that same year. From 1970 on, this model started to be manufactured in steel and changed its name to Colt Combat Commander. Also in 1970, the Colt Government Mark IV Series 70 hit the market. In addition to aesthetic changes, this model had a barrel bushing different from traditional models. However, this new bushing model was not as resistant as the old one. This error would be corrected only in 1983 at Colt Government Mark IV Series 80 model. Another novelty for the 80 series, following what Glock did a year earlier, was the addition of a firing pin block. The purpose of this block is to prevent the firing pin from moving forward unless the trigger is depressed. According to the manufacturer, this mechanism is supposed to prevent accidental discharges caused by dropping the pistol or catastrophic mechanical failures. In 1985, a subcompact version was released, Colt Officers ACP. This model had a more refined finish than the military versions, in addition to a 3.5-inch barrel. 1989 brought the Colt Double Eagle. This model featured both single and double action within the same weapon. In addition to the standard size, there is also a compact version. This one doesn't have the main lock like the other M1911, but features a decocking lever instead, as double action guns usually do. Following Colt's naming rule, the Colt M1991A1 was released that year, in both regular and commander versions. Both models had a simpler finish, similar to World War II weapons. The goal was to make this weapon cheaper and therefore more competitive. The Colt New Agent subcompact model was released in 2007, made of aluminum and a 3-inch barrel. Another important detail, it's the aiming system, machined in low relief, directly above the bolt. A low-precision weapon, that is, a gun that should only be used for short-range self-defense. As of 2010, the number of models based on the M1911 has greatly increased. Today, in Colt's catalog alone, 14 different pistol lines are available. Each one has its own variations, in many different models, calibers, and finishes. A customer can find from classic models to the most modern ones. Apart from the many options offered by Colt itself, there are a huge number of companies that manufacture accessories for these guns, which have always been very customizable. It is also possible to buy your weapon already with all the accessories, upgrades, and colors you want directly from the store. If we look at all these models and variations, we'll surely find M1911 models chambered in all kinds of ammo, including the mighty caliber 50. It is a high-quality weapon that contributed to the writing of American history, a design that is over 100 years old and continues to fascinate and create fans all over the world. Polymer weapons may be the trend in many military forces today, but the M1911 models will undoubtedly continue to win hearts and minds for the decades to come. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button and also subscribe to our channel. See you later.